Takes a lot to get a special edition of the Daily Delivery podcast, but this qualifies. Marcus Fuller joining me right now to talk about the news that he broke on Friday. Dennis Evans, prize recruit of the 2023 Gophers men's basketball recruiting class, has asked for his release from his national letter of intent. No longer a Gophers recruit after all, not expecting to come to Minnesota after all. Big blow to the Gophers. Obviously, Marcus, one of the highest recruits in the country, one of their best recruits, if not their best recruit in 20 years. What do you make of this story, especially what you've reported so far?
Yeah, wow. I figured that you wouldn't ask me back on to the podcast the way the team was playing, and this is not the way that I wanted to get back on. And it was maybe for a big upset or something.
Yeah,
But
right. Yeah,
you just when first of all, this is something that's kind of been heading in this direction for a while now.
okay.
I think most people are shocked by it. I obviously pretty shocked when I heard it was finalized, but I think, the way the season has been going, people might say, well, not surprised at all. Who would want to join a program that's 1-15 in the Big Ten and, obviously 11 game losing streak. But, you have to think about when Dennis Evans signed with the Gophers on November 9th, and when he committed to the Gophers in late September, they had come off their last place finish in the Big Ten.
Right.
Ben's first year. So if it was just about losing, struggling, he would not have signed with the Gophers. So you have to take that into account. But yes, you talked about it. Ben Johnson's highlight of the 2023 recruiting class was a 5-star recruit from California, 7'1". He was the highest rated recruit since Chris Humphreys in 2003. Recruiting rankings are what they are, but when you're that high, we're talking about top 15 when he was signed, and then he moved up to number 11 in the country, just outside the top 10 on the Rivals current list.
Right.
And I believe 24/7 has him 18th. That kind of ranking would put you in the McDonald's All-American game typically, but yeah, his team struggled this year in high school, and I think that had something to do with it. But you can't, without question, understate the potential presence that he could have had for this team. I've been covering recruiting a long time, not just Gopher recruits, and I put his shot blocking up there with Greg Oden.
Wow.
Is the best shot blocker that I've seen, at least since I've been covering college basketball and high school recruiting. And Chet Holmgren was right there.
Okay.
Evans was right there with those guys, as far as a high school recruit. So, that's not coming to the Gophers. He did not get his release yet, but
Okay.
he submitted the release submitted a request to the Gophers to be released from it on Friday.
Okay.
And as far as I know, according to my sources, the Gophers will grant that release. According to my sources, again, nothing. The Gophers have denied or declined the comment, but
Yeah.
According to my sources, he will probably get that release. It's in a situation where, you can't blame Ben Johnson and his staff for granting it, and when that indeed happens.
Sure.
You wouldn't want a player to be in your program that doesn't want to be there. It's not. You talk about those negotiations on the pro level when you have a player that is signed and is trying to get out.
Oh, sure.
There's a contract, and this is a contract, but it's a little different situation.
So as we think about this, and you wrote about how rare it is for, someone to ask for a release once they've signed the NLI. It's not uncommon at all to see someone commit, but then decommit. But this is a more rare thing, obviously, when you've gone through the entire process, you've made it official by signing that national letter of intent, and then to back out from that. That distinguishes this from, a commit versus decommit kind of situation. And in that regard, it does feel like then, sometimes when someone decommits or reopens their recruiting, there remains the opportunity or the possibility that they might sign with that same team, or they might ultimately stay with that same team. That doesn't appear to be the conclusion we're heading towards here with Dennis Evans, especially if he asks out of his NLI, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like you said, recruiting in the past, when it comes to the Gophers, the only instance I can think of where recruits were let out of their letter of intent was a coaching change.
Yeah.
It happened when Ben Johnson took over for Richard Pitino. Pitino had a sign or two signed recruits. One of them is still here, Trayton Thompson, and then a center from Kansas ended up signing with Wichita State or committing to Wichita State after the Gophers released him from his letter of intent. And then most recently in college basketball, Notre Dame's coach Mike Bray, announced that he would, no longer be coaching at the end of the season. Long time tenure at Notre Dame, and one of his recruits, a 4-star recruit, asked out of his letter of intent. But again, that's a coaching change. So this is this is kind of a territory that I had not been in, and I've been covering the team for 20 years. I would look back to, when Tubby Smith was the coach here at Minnesota, he had signed Royce White. Royce White was on campus, and then, got into a situation legally, even though it wasn't him that, committed it and, ended up leaving the program and before he even played a game here. And he was almost a 5-star recruit, top 20 recruit. Would have definitely made a huge impact on the Gophers. He was the best recruit in the Big Ten at the time, and that never happened. So a program, Tubby did end up going to NCAA tournaments after that.
Right.
A program can recover, but you have to take into account that when that happened for Tubby, that was in his 4th season, I believe, and they had already started turning the program around. Won 20 games. I believe he had already gone to the NCAA tournament. So I think this is, again, you can't understate the blow for this program, especially what we're seeing on the court right now with the losses that are piling up.
Sure.
We talked about for a long time that, next year,
Right.
I think we fans are looking toward next year. And right now there's a huge hole in the middle where you would have one of the best shot blockers possibly in the country not going to be in a Gopher uniform.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
I saw you quoted Ben Johnson in your story Friday. I don't know how long you talked to him or where that conversation went, but I got to imagine he's pretty disappointed. The quote, I'm going to always make decisions to put our program in a position to be successful. This is him, after declining to comment on Evans' request Friday, just kind of speaking generally, saying, I'm going to consume myself with the players who are here in this locker room and give them everything I have. Got to imagine, even if he didn't express disappointment to you, he's got to be just personally disappointed because, A, like you said, he's such a good, Evans was such a high recruit, such a good player. And B, how is maybe this is a broader discussion, but how is a team that's down in the Big Ten, how is a team like that supposed to rebuild in this modern era of college basketball, where I know this was not this is not a situation where it was a transfer portal or anything like that, but it just feels like the player mobility right now. And, we're not going to get into NLI stuff because I don't know where that goes with Dennis Evans, but there just seems like there's so many other factors at play right now that make it hard for especially a team that is struggling to get better. How's a struggling team supposed to get better when there's so much player movement and players can go anywhere they really want to right now?
Well, I think that there's different philosophies, and Ben definitely has a philosophy that's different for most, at least in the Big Ten right now. I mean, if you look at Micah Shrewsbury at Penn State, a borderline NCAA tournament team right now. And, he came in for the same year as Ben. Mike Woodson at Indiana, obviously the Hoosiers are, the traditional blue blood, and they recruit at a different level. But I think, if you look at those coaches who came in the same year as Ben, their programs are in a different situation. Indiana returned quite a few players. Trace Jackson Davis is still there, player of the year candidate. Race Thompson, they've had a good group of players. In Penn State situation, he relied heavily on the portal. Jalen Pickett could be a first, I don't know, say a first team All-American, but he's definitely an All-American candidate this year. He's got a first team All Big Ten type of player. I mean, he put up 30 against the Gophers, had 41 in a game this year. He's out. They got him out of the portal. This is his second year at Penn State, but Micah Shrewsbury, he struck gold in the portal with Jalen Pickett his first year, and then he got him to come back. So I think, and then again, he retooled with a few transfers. Ben Johnson's doing it in a different way. Yes, he relied heavily on the portal last year when he didn't have much time to recruit and add from the high school ranks. And then he lost most of those players to the portal. I'm sorry, to graduation.
Right.
And he did not retool as much with the transfer portal. He brought in Dawson Garcia, Talon Cooper, Tara Samuels. But for the most part, 5 freshmen that he brought in, one of them is redshirting. And then he had a couple players return. So it's a little different situation with the rebuilding that Ben Johnson's doing. I think he realized that this year was going to be tough trying to win with young players. They had a couple of injuries that they weren't, thinking that they were going to have with Isaiah Enon and Parker Fox, 2 veteran forwards that would have really helped him in the front court. Obviously, Jamison Bell, their leading scorer last year, doesn't start the season. And then, Garcia misses several games. Braden Carrington misses several games. So, if you put all these things together, this is not the recipe for them to be very competitive this year. We've seen other teams in the Big Ten go through losses, whether there's injury or transfer. Nebraska, they're going to play on Saturday of going through the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think this is not uncommon in the Big Ten to be where Minnesota's at. As far as recruiting, though, if you don't recruit the portal and you don't try to stay old, there really is hard to be competitive, especially at the high major level.
Couple more things for you, Marcus Fuller. Appreciate this time on a Friday. This is still a developing story to a certain degree. I'm sure you still have reporting to do, so I appreciate this. Your story talked about, all the reporting you've done on this leading up to this moment indicated that there was, a lot of what Dennis Evans liked about Minnesota was the relationships that had been built with Ben Johnson and his staff. There was not any indication that those relationships were imperiled or changed in any way, was there?
No, it was not a situation where, Ben Johnson, the assistant coach Marcus Jenkins, who recruited Dennis Evans, that those relationships remain, strong. I think, when you look at the situation, a lot of times you say, oh, well, that player, signed with this program because of this head coach,
right? Or,
this player signed with this little program because of an assistant. And then if a head coach is not there or assistant's not there, then they say, oh, I don't want to play for that school. I think this was an overall thing for Ben Johnson to get Dennis Evans. He came on a visit. It was actually a football game that he visited. He was just overwhelmed by the fan support. They chanted his name. They knew who he was, his whole family was there. He had a coach there with him as well. And, they just enjoyed the visit. I mean, the players treated him, like he was part of the team already, and watched them practice. One of the things Dennis Evans said to me was that he was really impressed with the intensity of practice, and, all the players, pretty locked in on defense more than anything, and that was a real pride of Dennis Evans was playing defense. And he really, was impressed by that. There's players like a Pharrell Payne, who's a freshman, that, and he's a post player, so how they were dealing with him and how he played earlier this season, those are really positives, even though they were losing some games. Obviously look at the record and you just say, hey, that's the reason why Dennis Evans left. And the family wouldn't go in too much detail with me.
Yeah.
But that was not the singular reason for him wanting out of his letter of intent. So I think there's obviously discussion there that's probably going on in message boards, why, but Dennis knows that, Ben knows, and now he won't be a Gopher. And I think what happens now is you look at what they do have on this team. They have one senior. They have a front court with Dawson Garcia and Pharrell Payne, and some younger players. Caden Betts is the guy that's redshirting. Joshua Ola Joseph is starting. They have two forwards that are out with injuries, and Enan and Parker Fox. So there's some pieces there, but you can't replace a shot blocking 5-star recruit, even in the portal. But I'm sure that's where Ben will have to go, is the transfer portal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. That's going to be my final thought. Like, what, he's not the only part of next year's recruiting class. He's not the only reason for optimism, even if he was kind of the centerpiece to a certain degree and someone you can build around. I mean, now I suppose the task ahead is to, like you said, to regroup, to kind of refocus on the pieces they have. And it does seem like they could be better next season, certainly than they are right now. It's hard to be a whole lot worse than a 1-win team in the Big Ten and, losing by a large margin in a lot of these games lately. But I guess if you're going to start to think about an early identity for next year, probably built around some of those players that are coming back and then some of those new pieces coming in, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they have, Pharrell Payne has been playing a lot more confident as of late. In the Maryland game Wednesday, 17 points. A week ago, over the weekend, when Dawson Garcia returned, Pharrell had his best game.
Yeah.
And he was off the bench. He started some games with Garcia out, but Dawson comes back and he has 23 against Penn State. Payne has 18 and 10 and 6 assists coming off the bench. Hadn't seen a game like that for any player, post player for the Gophers, since Jordan Murphy. So the future's bright with Pharrell Payne to get better. You would think that now, I know the coaches were talking a lot about Payne and Dennis Evans playing together, but I think Payne really has to be their future at center. And if you look at the portal, you'll have to bolster the front court there. But again, if you look at the perimeter, we haven't talked about him, but Cameron Christie is the other player in that class. And, Dennis definitely has the high rating, high ceiling. Cameron Christie, in my opinion, is heavily underrated. Just watching him play in person and then, following him a little bit since he was signed. I mean, he's got very, very good pedigree with his brothers in the NBA. Max Christie played for Michigan State 1 year and then was drafted by the Lakers. He started some games for the Lakers this year, which I'm sure they have, quite a few players did. And
right.
It was a rough year for the Lakers, but as a rookie, that's impressive. And Cam is every bit as tall as his brother at 6'6". Very good shooting ability. And he's going to have to help them both at point guard and shooting guard next year. And, that's something to help build around with some of the young talent they have as freshmen.
Well, we'll see how it all shakes out. Please keep reading Marcus's coverage. Start Tribune, StarTribune.com. He's the one who broke this story. He has this covered on lockdown, as always. Marcus, appreciate your time, as always. Maybe the next time you're back on Daily Delivery, it will be a happier occasion, an upset, like you said, something good going on. But as for right now, we'll still keep reading the coverage, good or bad.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And we'll see if they can get a win to end the year.
We'll see. Thanks, Marcus.